Somebody please tell Dr. Umar Johnson that black men in the UK are not going to be listening to his advice or his way of life when he's telling them to stay away from white women and to stick to black women. That is not going to happen. Black men in the UK are heavily dependent on the economic security that white women provide. Black men in the UK get into relationships with women. I'm talking about adult men, not teenagers who still live at their mum's house and don't have life pressures on them. I'm talking about adult black men in the UK get into relationships with women to find a place to live for free.
This this one is a shock because is this real or is this a skit? I don't know. Let's find out. I don't know if this one is real or if this one is a skit. Yeah, because this is painting a slightly different picture to the UK that I know. But let's go.
And to find a place where they haven't got to pay bills. That's why black men in the UK are in relationships with white women on mass amounts, on mass levels. Because white women will lie and do benefits fraud to basically allow her man to live with her for very long periods of time, 10, 15, 20 years, where he doesn't have to pay any bills and he doesn't have any big financial commitments. Black women are not having it. I'm telling you, as somebody that's been with black gal after black gal after black, bro, I've been in relationships. My relationships have all been with black women. They're not allowed. They cannot respect a man. They cannot respect a black man. They cannot consistently have sex with a black man. They cannot love a black man. They cannot talk to a black man nicely. If he's had to move into her life and she's had to provide security for him, it will run out very quickly. He won't get longer than 12 months in that kind of situation. So when Dr. Umar Johnson is saying to black men, you need to stick with black women, he needs to go beneath the layer and start talking about black men's mentality and black men's attitude towards economics and towards family economics, basically. Man, them get money, they buy loads of trainers, they buy loads of designer clothes, they go on holidays, they go to restaurants, they rent cars, they finance cars, they cheat on their girls by booking hotels and all of that. They spend.
Now, listen, I don't know how much of this is real and how much of this is skit, but hat is off to Champ because he's touching on some real issues here. And the real issues for me that he's really going into is this whole aspect of UK brothers basically not having a mindset around finance and legacy long term. And I think I can totally agree with that. With regards to the initial synopsis about whether or not, you know, whether or not the black man in the UK is choosing the white woman because of all of the things that he's broken down. I don't know about that. I think typically, I know in the era I grew up in, that would not be kind of like the way it works. But at the same time, you know, everybody always says to each his own. So you got to make your dues as you make your dues. But one of the things that I do want to pick up that's been shared here, which I think is super paramount for all of us to keep in mind, is this aspect of generational wealth, this aspect of finance. Because it's interesting because Champion's talking here about relationships, but really the foundation of the psychology or the mentality that he's talking about comes back to finances. And I think this is one of the things that we really need to take a magnifying glass to as a community. We need to start recognizing that financial motives are one of the biggest motives maneuvering people into the things that they're being maneuvered into. So you take a moment and you think about the motives you've had for things you've done. Because interestingly enough, we're now living in a world where across the internet streets, people are talking about how relationships aren't working because of this, relationships aren't working because the women are making more money than the men and all of these other things. But the reality is that why the relationship is not working, or is the relationship really just not working because the man at his core is unhappy, because the woman at her core is unhappy? Now, yes, it might have to do with a money-based motive. By the end of the day, it's that unhappiness that's stemming from that money-based motive. And until we fix the root, we're always going to be complaining about the fruit. So we need to discover what the root is. And I think that's the core problem. I think the core problem is the fact that 9 times out of 10, people aren't looking at the root. People aren't looking at what seed was originally planted, but they're looking at the fact that their need has not been met off of what had been planted. And I think if we take a step back and start analyzing the actual core problem, we start analyzing what's actually creating the issue, then everything will change for you. Everything will change for me. Everything will change for us. You know, it's funny because I was dragged to church as a child. I remember being like 10, 11 years old and my mum dragging me to church. And the interesting thing is I don't remember close to anything that was ever shared in church when I was dragged to church as a child, except for on one particular day. And I remember it like it was yesterday. I must have been sat there, standing at the front, and the pastor, the man at the front, stood on the stage and he said there's three main causes of divorce. Now, for someone who doesn't remember any of the things that were taught in church except for this one particular sermon or this one particular message, it goes to show how much this impacted me. And I think the reason it's impacted me so strongly is because my parents decided to get divorced when I was around 6 years old. They separated when I was around 6 years old. So fast forward 5 years on, whilst I'm 11, sitting in this church and hearing this pastor actually talk about something that relates to me when he says there's three main causes of divorce. Listen, I was turned up. My volume was up inside of that sermon. And he basically went to break down what the three main causes of divorce were. And one of them, he said, were goals and dreams. And he basically shared the story. I've got my own version of that story, but effectively imagine, Susie and Steve, they meet each other at university. They decide they want to go on in the future together. They get married. Then let's say they're studying accountancy. They break out of their accountancy degree. They qualify. They graduate. They go buy their own place. They get married. And then Susie's working in one of the big four. Steve's working in another one of the big four. And 5 years later, 10 years later, their story is no more. And why is that? Because they both went into different environments. And in those different environments, their goals and their dreams are literally being tweaked. They're being worked on like a mechanic works on the car day by day by these different environments. In the example of this, the big fours, right? And as they're ending up becoming two different people, they're still coming home to each other and looking at each other like they're the same people they met back in university, which is not the case. And I remember that pastor breaking down those three main causes of divorce, specifically that one, goals and dreams, and it really having a massive impact on me, making me think, well, hold on a minute, how am I going to make sure if I desire to be married when I'm older, that I'm going to have a successful relationship? And it was strong on me that goals and dreams, vision, has to be something that's a key core component. And again, if you're someone who reads the Bible, Proverbs 29 verse 18, it says, without a vision, the people perish. So it's important for us to make sure we've got a vision. It's important for us to understand what we're doing and what is our mission so we can make sure that we don't end up missing. All right, let's get the rest of this. Let's get the rest of this.
They spend their money like that, but they ain't spending no money on owning, possessing and maintaining a house in the UK. And because they're not doing that, they need white women. Do you understand what I mean? So I go on American social media. I follow a lot of black content creators in America. And I realized that a lot of black men in America, I don't know about in New York or in LA, but a lot of black men in different parts of America have houses, bro. That's part of their pride as a man, as it should be. To have your own house, to maintain your own house, and to fall in love with a woman that can walk into your security and you can provide for her. She doesn't have to worry about paying bills or how the house is maintained. That's what a lot of black men in America are on. In the UK, you must be joking. Black men are not on that. No way.
Listen. I can't agree with the last part. I do agree that most men, I wouldn't just say it's men in America, I think men across the globe desire to have a home that they can bring their queen, their princess, their damsel into and say, listen, babes, let's share this world together. I think the real problem we have is mainstream media has literally polluted the vision that we all had of what a man is, what a woman is. Thanks be to God to those content creators that are out there still pushing forward the right narrative. But the reality is, men in the UK, listen, we are men just like any other men. So I know that we have the same desires deep down on the inside. It's natural. It's just who we are. So I want to encourage you, if you are a young man in the UK and you are on your journey, finding your way, be someone who stands firm, as we say, 10 toes on what you believe in, and be someone who says, you know what, I am going to go get that crib. I am going to go get that home. I'm going to create that world so I can bring in my damsel. I can bring in my queen. I can bring in my princess, and we can live proverbially happily ever after. The only issue is the happily ever after isn't the bill of goods that we've been sold. The happily ever after is actually something you're going to have to discover yourself. And last comments I'm going to share is this. With regards to having the home, the real estate, the property, we are one step away from being able to make things happen and make things pay. And this is the challenge we have. The issue is we're not being taught in education, in school, how to, run our finances appropriately. We're not being taught in college and university how to win with this financial thing. So as a result, yes, you are destined to lose unless you find another path that you decide to choose. With that being said, Sammy, I Can Win. I'm signing out. You know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know your views. What are your thoughts on this video today? And side by side with that, always remember, small keys open big doors. I'll see you on the next one. Good day. God bless. Let's go.